As the war forces approached the heart of the capital, the invaders remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. Andrew led the charge, his heart burning with a need for vengeance, while the palace, isolated and arrogant, sat in silence, completely unprepared for the technological nightmare arriving at their door. Inside the palace, the Holy Cardinal Francisco Tunio Roman IV grew frustrated with his subordinates' failures. He spoke of Adonis's wrath, unaware that the very destruction he invoked was moments away from becoming a terrifying, fiery reality. A thunderous roar echoed through the capital, not of divine punishment, but of man-made destruction. Orange flames billowed into the sky as the gates fell, shattering the invaders' hubris and replacing their holy fear with the desperate realization of an enemy attack. The palace gates were obliterated, and the invaders were caught in a whirlwind of mechanical chaos. The Baymard forces drove through like ghosts of steel, their weapons raining down suppression that sent the Adonis warriors scrambling in a desperate, frantic dance for survival. Fear finally took root in the hearts of the Adonis followers. Yachman, watching his supposedly invincible superior fall to a weapon he didn't understand, realized that the legends of their immortality were nothing more than fragile lies against the power of true innovation. Landon held the reins of the battlefield, his voice echoing through the communicators as he orchestrated a 5-minute trap. The net was closing, and the central sector would soon be under the total control of his units. The two forces finally stood face to face. Landon stared down the cardinal, spotting the high-ranking officers among the crowd. He sought not to destroy them, but to capture them, to ensure that justice for the Zalipnian people would be carried out by their own hands. The clash of titans began. Landon moved with the fluid grace of Wing Chun, deflecting every brutal, rage-fueled attack from the Adonis warriors. Each strike he dealt echoed through the ranks, breaking bones and shattering the enemy's confidence in their own strength. The Adonis warriors grew desperate, their eyes widening as they realized they were facing something far beyond their training. Landon crippled them with clinical efficiency, snapping positions and tapping pressure points until his enemies were broken and immobilized at his feet. Finally, Francisco himself stepped into the fray. He fought with the desperation of a man whose ego had been shattered. But Landon was relentless, dismantling the Cardinal's defense until Francisco lost consciousness, his pride buried beneath the dust of the battlefield. With the battles concluded, aid arrived on the 6th day. Supplies flowed into the city as the Baymardians worked alongside the survivors. The dark shadow of Adonis's rule began to lift, replaced by the organized, restorative hand of a new beginning. Andrew and Lucia led the way back to the hidden city. After a year of silence, the return of the royals signaled the end of their forced hiding. The moment they arrived, the atmosphere shifted from stifling silence to overwhelming, tear-filled reunions. The Queen's cries echoed through the hidden Golden City. After months of terror, her babies were finally home. The entire population joined in, their tears of grief turning into cheers as they realized their beloved Zalipnia was finally safe from the grasp of tyrants. Upon their return to the palace, the atmosphere was thick with gratitude. Uther and Beverly approached Landon, the weight of their duty bowing to the man who had saved not just their kingdom, but their family. They knew the era of oppression was truly over. While the kingdom celebrated, a different battle raged in Baymard. Mother Kim was in labor, and Lucius waited in agonizing silence. The tension in the palace was thick. For them, this birth was the true future of their lineage. In the midst of the birthing pain, a soul from a distant, primitive past stirred. The girl known as Blue Hair, a product of the late Stone Age, found her consciousness shifting from the darkness of death to a light that felt far too warm and strange to be the world she once knew. The struggle ended with a cry that heralded a new beginning. Little Cora entered the world, a child of both modern strength and ancient spirit. As her eyes flickered open, she looked out upon a world of metal and light, a far cry from the stone axes and caves of her former life. Landon walked the halls of the palace, his mission successful and his sister safely born. The future was bright, the treaties were being signed, and for the first time in a long time he felt the heavy burden of duty lift just enough for him to hum a tune of freedom. But peace was a fleeting thing. Far away, the spring rains masked a new threat. Over 250 warships converged on Tariq, their size and scale a testament to an enemy that viewed the world not as a home, but as a territory to be conquered. The horns of war sounded across Tariq, echoing the desperate reality of an impending siege. The soldiers, trained in the ways of Baymard, did not panic. They moved with the precision of gears in a clock, ready to defend their shores against the encroaching shadow. The first volley struck true. With weapons born of innovation and tactical brilliance, the Tarraquan forces turned the tide before the enemy could even land. The massive ships, once thought invincible, began to falter under the weight of precise, calculated destruction. Rodham watched in disbelief as his pride was shredded. His ships were sinking, his men were frantic, and the so-called beggars he intended to crush were orchestrating his downfall with a cold, terrifying efficiency. The war for Tariq had only just begun. As the patrol ships maneuvered to safety, leaving the enemy fleet in chaos, the truth of the situation crystallized. This was no longer a skirmish. It was a testament to the resilience of those who refused to bow. The siege of Jangam City became a legend that would be etched into the pages of history. The mission was clear and the path forward was set. Landon, the silent architect of these changing times, knew that the unification of the Zol was the only way to ensure lasting peace. He had the list, the power, and the resolve to see it through. As spring settled in, the reconstruction of Zalipnia moved forward with steady momentum. The treaties were signed, the port locations chosen, and the people stood taller, knowing their future was no longer written by the cruelty of tyrants, but by the labor of their own hands. Connectivity became the new heart of the empire. With cruise ships scheduled and ports established, the isolation of the past was being dismantled, brick by brick and wave by wave. The Zol empires would soon learn that the world was much larger than they had ever imagined. The dawn of a new era had arrived. With the mission defined and the stage set, Landon prepared to venture further into the unknown. The chapters of war were closing, but the story of a transformed world was only just beginning to unfold, one triumph at a time.